Good morning. The Jakut Power Government Lecture begins today. As I have already hinted in my earlier video that I will be giving lectures or tutorials on political history of Ghana. And to be more specific, since my target is government students and by extension Ghanaian citizens and residents who may be interested in how the British colonial government conducted their activities in Ghana and by extension some parts of West Africa, I will be very selective in my topics. So today I am going to look at how the British govern Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia. And in that case, I am going to treat a topic captioned the Crown Colony System. Before I go into the lecture, I would want my viewers, and in this case, my students, to understand that when we say Crown Colony System, we are just looking at a British colonial administrative system. That is, we are looking at how the British govern their colonies. But before I go into the explanation of the Crown Colony System and move on to look at the features of this system of colonial administration, I would want to look at the background of the Crown Colony System. So I now begin the lecture by giving you the background of this British colonial administrative system we usually term as the Crown Colony System as history and government students of Ghana. Once upon a time, the British as a colonial power managed to acquire some territories in West Africa. And these territories were mainly in the coastal parts of West Africa, and that is before the partition of Africa. That is to say that before the partition of Africa, Britain as a colonial power acquired some territories in the coastal parts of certain countries in West Africa, and these countries included the Gold Coast, which is now called Ghana today, the Gambia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. So when Britain acquired these territories in the coastal parts of West Africa, they termed these territories as the British colonies. However, after the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, through different methods, the British managed to extend her authority to the hinterlands, that is places without sea. And having extended her authority to the hinterlands, Britain now added the hinterlands to the coastal parts. And don't forget that I said earlier that when they acquired the coastal territories as their colonies, they termed them the British colonies. But when they extended their authority to the hinterlands after the partition of Africa, which took place from 1884 to 1885, they now refer to these territories as the British colonies and protectorates. And since our main focus is in Ghana, we are now coming to give a detailed explanation of how the British, as a colonial territory or power, acquired the coastal pass in Ghana, which we normally refer to as the Southern Ghana. So somewhere in 1873, after the Segrenti War, a certain war was fought, and this war is termed in the history of Ghana as the Segrenti War. So after the Segrenti War of 1873 to 1874, the British officially declared their authority over the coastal pass of Ghana, and these were administratively demarcated as the Western Province, the Eastern Province, and the Central Province. So talking about Eastern, Western, and Central Province, we are looking at Accra stretching to Koforidua and Insawam. Then when we come to the Central Province, then we are referring to Cape Coast and the towns near Cape Coast. Then the Western Province also included Takoradi, Secondary Takoradi, if you want it that way. So, since repetition means emphasis, I am saying that after the Segrenti War of 1873 to 1874, Britain, as a colonial power, officially declared their authorities over the southern territories in Ghana and referred to them as the British colonies. However, in 1901, after the Asantewaa War, Britain managed to extend her authority to what in history we refer to as the Asante territories. So that is to say that in 1901, after the Asantewaa War, Britain was able to extend her authority to the Asante territories, and by so doing, Britain referred to these places as the British colonies and protectorates. That means the Asante territory was seen as a protectorate of Britain. And just as it did to the Asante territory in 1902, by persuasion and agreement, Britain was able to extend her authority to their northern territories. That is today's northern region, upper east, upper west, that have been further demarcated by the present government. So having done this, Britain now officially established her authority over the Gold Coast and therefore referred to these territories as the British colonies and protectorates. Having done this, Britain now adopted an administrative system to govern the Gold Coast. I repeat, after officially establishing its authority over the Gold Coast, that started in 1873 with the Southern Territories and continued to the hinterlands in 1901 and 1902. Britain now adopted a system of administration to govern her colonies and protectorates. And this system is what I am coming to look at with my audience. This system is what we refer to as the crown colony system. This takes us to the explanation of the crown colony system. When we talk about crown colony system, it simply means a British colonial administrative system whereby the British govern their West African colonies and treated them as if they were the bona fide or legal properties of the British authority. I repeat, crown colony system can be explained as a British colonial administrative system whereby the British treated or governed their West African colonies as if they were the legal properties of the British. We are now saying that Britain adopted the term the crown colony system to put across a certain message to the people they had established their authority over and the world outside there. What message did they seek to communicate when they termed their administrative system in the West African colonies as the crown colony system? This is what they meant. They adopted the term crown colony system to emphasize the fact that their West African colonies were totally controlled by the British crown or monarch with or no little control by the local people. That is the reason why they adopted the term crown colony system. That is to emphasize the fact that their West African colonies were totally controlled by the British authorities or the British crown without any form of control by the local people. In 3 minutes, let me give you a summarized version of the features of the crown colony system. The crown colony as an administrative system, which also include the indirect rule system, was hierarchically structured. I said this administrative system that the British adopted to govern their West African colonies was hierarchically structured. And at the pinnacle of political power was the British monarch, who was followed by the Secretary of State, a kind of cabinet minister and a member of parliament in Britain. Next to the Secretary of State, under this political ladder, was the Colonial Governor, who resided in the colony. And the Colonial Governor was supported by 2 important government institutions that the British created to support the governor to administer the colony. That is to say that the governor was flanked by the legislative and executive councils, which were created to support the governor to administer the colonies. And below the governor and these important institutions were the provincial or the district commissioners, who were British resident officials who were stationed in all the native authority areas. As we move on, you will understand what we mean by native authority areas. And at the bottom of this political ladder were our own what? Chiefs. Because I've already told you that the system also involved the indirect rule system, which will be explained as time goes on. So at the bottom of the political ladder of the crown colony system, which I have described as being hierarchical in nature, were the chiefs. That is our traditional word, authorities. On this note, I want to end today's lecture by reminding you that I gave you the background of the crown colony system, telling you the fact that before the partition of Africa, Britain had already acquired some territories in West Africa, and these territories were mainly concentrated in the coastal parts. However, after the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, Britain now extended her authority to the hinterlands. And having done that, Britain adopted a system of administration called the crown colony system, which has already been defined in the main lecture. And we also describe this crown colony system as being hierarchical in nature, with the British Queen or monarch at the pinnacle of political power. And next to the British Queen was the Secretary of State, who was followed by the governor, flanked by two important institutions called the Legislative and the Executive Councils that supported the governor to administer the colony. And below the governor and these two important institutions were the British Provincial Commissioners or District Commissioners. And at the bottom of this political ladder were our own chiefs, the very authority they came to meet. They decided to use them to administer their colonies. In the next lecture, I will be giving you detailed description of the 7 main features of the crown colony system. But before then, I would plead with you to like after viewing, and then you also subscribe to get notifications. How do you subscribe? You just subscribe by pressing the notification bell, so that in my next lecture, which is going to focus on the detailed description of the Queen, the Secretary of State, the Colonial Governor, the Executive and Legislative Councils, the Provincial or District Commissioners, and the Chiefs, you can enjoy that lecture. Until then, thanks for listening and thanks for cooperating. Once again, Jakut Power Government is designed to teach the political history of Ghana by looking at how the British started governing us. Thank you.